So the Biden campaign is floating out their potential cabinet picks, and of course, behind the scenes, different forces are trying to push for their cabinet picks. And one of those names was Senator Bernie Sanders, with the idea of essentially taking over the Labor Department as Labor Secretary. Now, you and I, Professor Harvey J, we were chatting about this and whether or not we felt this was the right move. So this is from Common Dreams. They stated that Politico reported this on Thursday, which, you know, I think also is something to keep in mind, that places that break these stories might have their own agendas. But
yes.
Two unnamed people close to the Vermont senator, whoever those people are, I mean, I could say the same thing if I wanted to. You could say the same thing. Stated that Sanders, who had been campaigning relentlessly for Biden, both virtually and in person in recent weeks, has been making his push for the top job at the Labor Department, in part by reaching out to allies in the transition team. You know, this is an interesting conversation. Robert Reich, the former Secretary of Labor, who's an economist under Bill Clinton, who's definitely sparred with the neoliberals in recent years, said to Politico, quote, he'd be terrific. I have a lot of thoughts on this.
Yeah, and I do want to let people know that when we ended up exchanging thoughts on that, you were the one who first raised the question. It was in my head, but I hadn't said it to anyone, because a few people that I was also speaking to seemed kind of thrilled by it, and I thought, no, they're missing a whole bunch of stuff here, a whole bunch of stuff, which and I'm even surprised. But go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so I'm going to start with an example. It's not analogous exactly, but it is something to keep in mind. So Arizona in what was it, 2008, 2009, right after Obama was inaugurated, Arizona had turned blue a few years before. You know, Arizona is supposedly this red state that you know, it's been purple and everybody doesn't believe it, blah, 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 and now it might turn blue. Well, it actually turned blue in 2006. And Arizona had a governor, Janet Napolitano, not imperfect, but a Democrat, which was, you know, unheard of. Actually, no, not unheard of in Arizona. There were many Democrats who were Udalls, you know, in Arizona.
Udalls, absolutely.
Exactly. So Janet Napolitano, at the rise of the Tea Party, which was very much based in Arizona, was chosen by President Obama to be director, to be the head of Homeland Security, and it created an opening for Jan Brewer, who was a right-wing Tea Party, like, crazy person, a nut. Now, it really shocked me at that time. And I remember it was a lone voice saying, like, what are you doing? Don't take her out. Like, there's plenty of people you could put in DHS, plenty, who will get what you want done. But taking out a valuable role and as a result, you've seen education get cut, 49th in the country in terms of education. That's just one example. But in this situation, Bernie has such a powerful voice. He is the lion of the Senate now. He is the one who is championing, beyond Elizabeth Warren, as we all know, championing true progressive legislation, and will be even more so in a Biden administration than he ever was before, especially with this new cadre of progressive Congress members, and maybe even a couple senators to you know, throw in the mix. Putting him as Labor Secretary, which, let's just remind folks, Tom Perez was Labor Secretary, so let's just keep in mind what did he do, right? Okay. Waste of talent. This is the moment he was made. Bernie Sanders should live out his life in the Senate, just being annoying and forceful. That's my perspective.
Okay, well, for a start, people may have noticed Robert Reich was quoted there. We should remember that I believe Robert Reich was locked in the closet of the Labor Department by Bill Clinton.
That's his words.
And they were buddies, by the way. They went back to Rhodes Scholar days at Oxford or something. Now, and what worried me is Bill Clinton's willingness to endorse putting Bernie possibly in the closet of the Labor Department. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, let me start from a historical vantage point, and then let's get to the really important questions of today, and by way of history as well. Look, who mattered as Labor Secretary? A woman named Frances Perkins, who was the industrial commissioner in Franklin Roosevelt's gubernatorial administration of 28 to 32.
In New York.
And,
In New York.
In New York State, sorry, yes, New York State. And I was about to say which part of New York, but that's to go back to a different conversation.
But out of the progressive era, though, like
yes,
that's where
she was a woman of the progressive era, and the deal was when he sat with her to invite her to come to Washington. The deal was, knowing that he himself was interested in Social Security legislation, she said she'll do it if he promised that he would pursue the Social Security legislation in a first term. That was a way to guarantee it. And he did guarantee it. And in fact, in the second 2 years, as known as the Second New Deal, they did pursue it. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the labor secretary, properly positioned with a promise from the incoming president, could do quite a bit. Okay. And don't forget, the labor movement of the early 1930s was as weak in certain ways as the labor movement is today. However, the labor movement of that time had some fairly wily leadership. John Lewis of the United Mine Workers, Sidney Hillman of the Amalgamating Clothing Workers, and folks like David Dubinsky, who were coming up, the International Ladies Garment Workers Union. And they had some great organizers, okay, whose names I won't bother to mention. Well, anyhow, but the other thing is that she was going to join a truly progressive administration.
Right.
You know, there were Republicans in the administration, but the point was Harold Ickes was at the Interior Department.
Not this Harold Ickes.
Not this Harold Ickes.
Let's just be very clear.
I believe he was. And he was a very progressive Republican, very progressive, who, by the way, had headed the NAACP in the city of Chicago and had phenomenal relations with the Native American reservations around the country, which is why the New Deal also saw, for lack of a better way of putting it, an Indian New Deal. So there were going to be these other progressives. And she herself, within 1 year, basically got FDR to bring another member of that progressive gubernatorial years, Harry Hopkins, to Washington. So they were positioned. But here's the other thing, and this will get us now back to the Sanders question all the more. Sure, great administration, but there was a hell of a leadership in the Senate in those days. And that included three really significant figures, strangely enough, only one of whom was a Democrat. And that was Robert Wagner of New York State, a German-American child immigrant who grew up to become really what was known as the pilot of the New Deal. If FDR had social or labor kind of legislation in his mind, Wagner was the one who led the charge in the Senate. In fact, if people don't realize it, the National Labor Relations Act of 1935 is also better known as the Wagner Act, because he had, he wanted to pursue industrial democracy in the 1930s. Second is Robert La Follette Jr., not the progressive capital P, sort of lion of the Senate of the past. This is his son, who held his position after he passed away, Bob La Follette Jr., who actually deserves as much credit for making history from the Senate as anyone. He launched a commission that investigated corporate resistance to labor union organizing. And he revealed, this is no joke, he revealed that the biggest corporations were creating arsenals, literally like National Guard arsenals on their premises. That's the second, okay? And the third figure, and he was a progressive Republican, the third figure is George Norris.
We should do that again.
Sorry?
We should set up a commission like that again.
Oh, undeniably. We need those kind of folks in the Senate. And the third major figure is George Norris, who was a Republican from Nebraska. But these Republicans came out of the progressive moment. And as a consequence, they basically, the hardcore Republicans viewed these folks, they were third party types in their own way, you might say, especially the Wisconsin progressives. In fact, the Wisconsin progressives were so great that Roosevelt turned his back on the Wisconsin Democrats in 1936 and embraced the Wisconsin progressives. So, and that George Norris is the man who literally, with Roosevelt, projected the Tennessee Valley Authority, the dams and the factories and the projects that lifted that region out of the worst poverty imaginable in the South. Okay, so you have these three great senators, and there were others. So now let's come to the present day, right? Biden, we know Biden's not a progressive. He's not.
He might be malleable, but he's not exactly.
The question is, if he is malleable, then the question is to what extent he's going to be pushed. And I actually don't know if being labor secretary is as effective a place for Bernie to push as it would be to be the senior figure of a new progressive movement inside of Congress, Senate, and House.
Right.
And in fact, let's go further. If we think in terms of threes, and I'll be kind to some other people, Bernie Sanders, he's not just a progressive, he's a social democratic progressive. Elizabeth Warren, okay, whatever her record in the past, was, the fact is that she is a Republican in the Democratic. Sorry, she's a progressive. That was really good. That was really good because I was remembering. A lot of people don't realize her background. They don't look. Hillary.
Yeah,
Clinton
she used to be a Republican. Yeah,
Hillary Clinton was a Goldwater girl.
Oh my God.
Liz Warren was a member of it probably still is, of the Federalist Society, etc.
So
but
funny.
She's a progressive now, and so if you get Bernie, who's going to lead the charge in the Senate on two issues: workers' rights and labor questions, and the social issues, especially healthcare. And he's already announced that he's going to push not just reducing the Medicare age to 55, but he's going to push for Medicare for all kids, something that I've been calling for as a backup stance for the Democrats. And Biden couldn't even bring himself last night to mention it. So you've got Bernie doing that. Regulatory legislation, that is Elizabeth Warren's specialty.
Yeah.
And there is no doubt that we have got to rein in, if not control, capital right now, okay? And then third, here's the other guy. Look, my understanding from people that I know in Massachusetts is that Markey was not this like great progressive, but he's been moved by AOC.
And his state. I mean, both of them, listen, I mean, that's ultimately it, is you have a state that has been historically progressive.
Right.
Yet its leadership has shifted away. Sorry, I don't mean to.
Well, people used to say to me, would you like to see Elizabeth Warren as Attorney General? And I said, no, I don't want to. We need senators. FDR's New Deal was produced in Congress by the senators allied with him. And Markey could well become, he could go down in history as the champion in the Senate of the Green New Deal. So let these three figures, Bernie as the sort of mentor to those other two, perhaps.
Right.
And I think there's no doubt the degree to which he set an example to others to pursue a more progressive stance. I mean, why would you want to pull him out of, why would Bernie, I don't even know how Bernie could have thought that.
I don't know if he did. I mean, but that's like classic neoliberalism, though. This is something that they're so good at, like making progressives feel like it's a good thing. But this is why we all have to be, I'm looking at this. Let's just go back to sharing a screen real quick. This article, and our friends and our allies at People for Bernie, they tweet out in the time. They didn't say specifically, in reference to this, but here's a clip of Bernie Sanders talking about the constitutional right for a union to organize. And let's play this real quick. Let's just show.
Sure.
Legislation that we've introduced says that in America, workers have the constitutional right to organize. That's called freedom of assembly.
Exactly.
And therefore, in that legislation, we outlaw the ability of states to pass and maintain right to work legislation. Legislation.
Sorry. So in this piece, it says, while the progressive response has been pretty much positive, Nathan Robinson from Current Affairs says it's a really bad idea for Sanders to become labor secretary because as an administration official, he'd be unable to harshly criticize the Biden White House. We are going to urgently need independent left voices to tell the truth about Biden, not apologists. Now, okay, great. Yeah, that's sort of true, but not always. I mean, yes, administrations conflict openly. Listen, Biden himself went against Obama when it came to gays being able to marry, but I get the essence of that is true.
And you had John Nichols on the show. John Nichols will tell you very much the degree to which Henry Wallace fought Truman, but of course doing so cost him.
Iced him out. Exactly. I mean, just as a reference point for folks, Wallace was the vice president, and then he was pushed out, and Truman, the great Truman, I'm rolling
well,
my eyes.
Don't underestimate Truman. We'd be lucky if we had a Truman today compared to what we've gone through. I can tell you that.
Well, as you know from watching my show yesterday, the only president that has ever been elected with such low poll numbers in terms of approval ratings was Truman. So that just puts you where the temperature of the country was at that time. And Henry Wallace was, of course, the most popular politician at the time. And then he decided to go third party. And if you guys are still thinking about that, maybe you should go back and look at history and see how that rolled out.
Yeah.
Just as a side note, a little commentary here. I picked up on something. So Jim Roosevelt is oh God, I'm going to get attacked again by the DNC, but Jim Roosevelt was on the Unity Reform Commission with me, and he is the iron fist of the DNC. I think that might be the way of saying it. He knows all the rules. He knows how to crack down on folks. And so this maneuver right here, make the president think they're getting something. That is a very Jim Roosevelt strategy. And Jim Roosevelt was the grandchild, is a grandchild of FDR. And then you mentioned Harold Ickes, and I'm like, that's the other one. You want to know where the mechanics, the sausage is made. Harold Ickes in the consulting. I mean, he sits on all these like rules committees. They know how to maneuver the rules and make you feel like you're getting some progress. Doesn't mean that you don't go on them.
Yeah, but then I want to indicate something even sort of ironic. And I mentioned this to you some weeks ago, that there was this group of New Dealers descendants, Jim Roosevelt, Harold Ickes Jr., I guess is his full name.
I mean, but he was in the White House, the Clinton White House, as the chief of staff.
Yeah. No, I get you.
I mean, I know you know that.
Francis Perkins would be I'm not sure if it was a granddaughter or a great niece, but somebody else. And last but not least, Scott Wallace, who is Henry Wallace, who had been Secretary of Agriculture, then Vice President under Roosevelt during the World War II years. These four authored a major public letter that appeared in the Wilmington newspaper, in a variety of places, and really pressed, it seemed, for Biden to go big. Now, they didn't go as far as to say, let's guarantee work. They didn't go so far as to say, let's pursue Medicare for all, but they were pushing Biden further than Biden himself wanted to go. So the other possibility, not to get too conspiratorial about it.
I don't believe them.
Well,
I'll throw it out there. I know these people.
Is that, look, I mean, if corporate people are smart, they have to know, they have to know, one possibility is that they have to know that if they don't do things right, then they're going to get something they don't want over the horizon, okay? We're not going, I may be old, but progressives generally these days are pretty young, 30s, 20s, and you're the rising generation. So the fact is, they may well want to reform the nature of capitalism today, okay? Now, the other possibility is, which I think is an interesting thought, to what extent Ickes and Roosevelt, or for that matter, Bill Clinton, I mean, the whole cohort of these folks would have said, what is the old story? Keep your enemies, close. What is it? Close,
but your friends close, but your enemies closer.
Closer. And, bring Bernie in, because in fact, that could be the case. Don't let Bernie be in a position to come at you from the Senate. That's a possibility.
I absolutely think, without a doubt, that is their strategy. Okay. Without a doubt. They know he has power.
I'm not telling you you're paranoid. I think...
I'm not being paranoid. I know that's right. No. Take bets on it.
Paranoid,
I have no doubt.
People are the last people to recognize when they're paranoid. I'm telling you, you're not paranoid.
No, I mean, he's the most powerful voice on issues in a moment of crisis, economic crisis, in a way that they could have never even imagined 6 months ago, 8 months ago. And he is his own force of nature. He has his own platform. He has his own fundraising. He has his own messaging, world. He has his campaign account that he can message stuff out of still to this day in a way that he can't even do with his Senate account. So let's just keep in mind, he can't do that.
And I want to add to what you just said, because what you just said implies this, but I want everyone else to hear it. Bernie is the only U.S. senator, and this is how he ran his campaigns, when asked, what are you going to do if the Supreme Court opposes you, or the Republicans? Bernie is the only one who realizes what FDR realized and what his cabinet realized. If you need to make something happen, You don't rely on law alone. You mobilize your fellow citizens. And that is something that Bernie realizes. And by the way, that is something that's what makes neoliberals truly neoliberals. They have ever since Jimmy Carter literally feared their own party voters because they know the party is to their left. Okay. And look, and they also know that Bernie would have beaten Trump in 2016. They know that Americans want really significant change. And that's Bernie. And even if he's, I don't know, is he what, 78 now or whatever?
He will be.
The point is, he is the one guy who can literally bring people out in diverse ways.
And push the pressure points. Like, so I want to triple down on this. He should not be labor secretary because his ability to mobilize folks in whether it's around issues related to police brutality, defunding the police, whether it's related to Medicare for all, whether it's related to any of his platform items, especially those that are related to this crisis of this moment, he can mobilize folks with his vehicle. And if he is suddenly removed from the battlefield, who's the general? And you put him in administration that he already has to deal with a bunch of unions that also don't love him and don't love, I mean, at least the leadership doesn't love him. Not all of them, but a good chunk of them. And I mean, that's a cesspool for, you and I probably agree, I don't want to put words in your mouth. There were a lot of missteps from the Bernie campaign in 2020 that should have been addressed from 2016, and then just some institutional folks that were gone that kind of knew how to maneuver this stuff.
Yeah, and can I just
can't make that mistake this time around.
I just want to say one thing else, is that some historian might say, but well, FDR's cabinet didn't hesitate to mobilize, but that's FDR's cabinet. Joe Biden is not FDR. FDR told his cabinet to go out and encourage, excuse the expression, that's the term they used, housewives to mobilize against business. And they created the first housewives movement. The nation wrote it up big back in like 1936, 37. Bernie was capable of doing that kind of thing. If he had been president, incoming, you could bet he would have chosen his cabinet members both for their acumen in leadership, but also for their capacity to be able to reach out to constituencies and prepare them to mobilize if necessary.
Right. And one more note on that, just to go back to the Hickeys, Roosevelt, the New Deal descendants.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, Henry Wallace was the thorn. So as much as you say those things about FDR, he was a thorn to them, right? Is that fair enough to say to FDR?
No, actually, no.
You don't think so?
I know.
Oh man, my argument's going to go away.
No.
Okay. I know you have a different opinion than John Nichols.
And I have talked a lot about this. John Nichols and I have talked a lot about this. But I'm not telling you he wasn't there as a conscience in a fashion. But what it is FDR made Wallace all the more progressive. He knew here's the first model that they had. It works with FDR and Eleanor. Everyone used to complain to Roosevelt, your wife is just way out there. And he had a line. Remember, this is 1930s. He said, can you control your wife? But the fact was that she was testing everything. FDR once said when he first ran for president, I don't want to be too far out in front of my fellow citizens. Mm-hmm. So Wallace was doing basically, I'm not telling you this was like Roosevelt said to him, go out and do this, but he served a very important purpose. As the wartime president, there were things Roosevelt could not do. And he was very effective in using both Eleanor and Wallace and others to do that. So I would hesitate to endorse if Nichols said that. John and I go back way to. We'll talk sometime, he and I, and one of us will.
My whole perspective on this was as simple as he was becoming too independent, too vocal within the administration, was pushed out, swapped out for Truman, and then.
Wait, hold on. Others in the Democratic elite. Oh, sorry. The Democratic elite wanted him out. Roosevelt wanted him in. Oh, sorry. I apologize.
Well, I can't. Yeah. So clearly he was to be pushed out, and then he was left kind of. like, he didn't have social media.
Well,
he didn't have like a billion small dollar donations.
FDR's favor, FDR made him Secretary of Commerce, which is not an insignificant place to be, especially in those days.
Do you hear that though? Secretary, he still put him in the cabinet position, not out to lead a movement. And then he did go and try to lead his own movement again. It was smaller, right?
We're going away from where we want to be.
I know, but point is, I'm just trying to think of some sort of similarities.
No, but the similarity works in a very significant way if you remember that Joe Biden is not FDR.
Right.
I mean, and that's the key thing, that Joe Biden may well want the likes of Sanders in the cabinet for exactly the reasons that you're pointing out, okay? Or we can fantasize and believe that Joe Biden is really a closet social democrat, and he just waited for this last big moment.
I mean, the first bill he presented, I always bring this back, first bill he presented as a 30-year-old senator was, or first thing it was campaign finance reform, so.
Yeah.
All right, fascinating conversation. Message to Bernie. Bernie, listen to us. Listen. I don't know who's around you now. I mean, that's not an insult. I don't know who's there. So I don't even know who to call anymore because, like, the campaign's over. This is our lobby. Don't take it. Don't be fooled. I know you're smart enough to know that. That's not like.
How about this?
Don't be baited.
You and I have to put our heads together at some point and come up with somebody we would like to see as Secretary of Labor. And I'm going to suggest this. I would like to see Robert Reich either as the head of HHS, or I'd like him to go back as Secretary of Labor and have revenge.
He could keep his Facebook show too, right? Like, you just turn it over. Yeah. I don't know how the money would work, but he's probably making a lot of money off that. That's good
for him. Good for him.
But maybe does he need it? I don't know. Let's lobby Robert Reich to come back for some, a vengeance. I love it. And I think Sarah Nelson, I love where she is right now, and I know people like to float her name, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. She's doing such incredible work in terms of mobilizing folks and being a real union leader.
The next generation of labor, you put, no, I don't.
She's so powerful. Oh my God, she's brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. She is the A. Philip Randolph of her day. We can talk about that another time.
All right, another conversation. Harvey K, thank you, always.
A blast, thank you.
Thanks for watching and listening to The Nomiki Show. But remember to click like and subscribe on YouTube, and please share on social media. If you're not already a patron, please join us for as low as $5 a month on patreon.com/The Nomiki Show for early and special content. That investment makes a huge difference. We are not corporate media raking in the dough. It's really you guys that are keeping us going. So please consider being a patron. And to our current patrons, thank you so much. We are incredibly grateful to you. We also now have swag. So check us out on thenomikishow.com to get your mugs, your totes, and your stickers.